I want to acknowledge that as we gather in Chicago, we are on the lands of the three fire peoples, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Boiwadami. And this was also an area of trade, gathering, and healing for more than a dozen other native tribes. Today, Chicagoland includes one of the largest and most diverse urban native communities. The native peoples are here. They are alive. They continue a tradition. And may we walk together respectfully in community. So also to acknowledge that this is a conversation that might bring up some uncomfortable and difficult feelings for those of us who have experienced such things as spiritual and religious trauma and abuse, and other topics that might have injured us as queer folk. And so as a moment, let's all just take a breath and ground ourselves, whether we're here in the room or watching online. This is an invitation to take care of ourselves and feel where we are in this moment for all that these conversations stir in us. Spiritual care team members are here today. Bridget here in the room in the blue, who's just raised her hand, and Mark outside. If you do need to talk to someone based on anything in this panel or another panel, or you just want to check in, have a non-sectarian or other type of blessing or prayer or a tarot reading tonight when our tarot readers are back, you are welcome to participate in your own spiritual care by seeking out those identified who have given their time and energies to that cause. As I said, I work with the San Francisco Night Ministry, and I am a chaplain. I say that the streets have ordained me, even if the church has not quite yet. It's been a long path. I am a prodigal seminarian and promiscuous, denominationally explorative worshiper. And like many of us, as we have heard, drag folk are the priests of our community. I appreciated that being brought back as a review in our previous panel. We are officially, unofficially, formally and informally grassroots spiritual practitioners. We're GSPs. So you can add that to your business cards. Okay, you're a GSP, a grassroots spiritual practitioner. That's a degree the community gives you. Welcome again to our panel. I would love it if each of you might share briefly a little bit about yourselves and your context and how you have worked with the drag and gender expansive communities. And I'll start with Rebel here in the room.
Hello. We have named this body Rebel. We live from pronouns we, they, and flux. And I am a collective of molecules and biotics and cells, the dreams of my ancestors, the future wishes of my descendants, and so many other things. I work as a death and grief doula, as well as a massage therapist. And I just dabble my way into all sorts of silly little activities in the community.
Thank you. Yes, dabbling on the way. Yes, just building up the gorgeousness of who you are and cultivating. Thank you. And Diana, might you share a little bit about your work and context?
Hi, I'm Diana. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and I'm here in the Diocese of California, which is based in San Francisco. I got to know John when I became a night ministry fellow in 2008. And that's mostly where my deep experience of pastoral care and relationship with drag artists really blossomed. And been doing it for a little bit of time. 2008, a little bit before that in my parish, when I was a parish deacon, and before I started street ministry. My day job, I have a day job. Deacons have to have a day job. They're not usually paid for ministry in the Episcopal Church. I'm an early childhood educator, and I work a lot with training teachers at this point in my life. And I work a lot with parents. Especially, a special gift is working with parents who have gender expansive children and helping teachers interact and be good supports for these families.
Mark, how about yourself? Could you share a little bit about your context of working with drag artists?
Sure. Good afternoon. At least on the East Coast, it's afternoon, and it's good to be with you all. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Pastor Mark Urson. I'm a pastor in the Lutheran Church, and my pronouns are he, him. And probably best to talk about my previous context because I have recently moved. But I was serving as pastor of St. John's Lutheran Church on Christopher Street in Manhattan. My colleagues got tired of me saying it was a stone's throw from the stone wall. We were just on the other side of 7th Avenue. And I went there in 2011. Congregation was really struggling. They had just gone through some very traumatic experiences, and there was next to nothing. It was truly a blank slate that I had to work with. And I started having requests from the neighborhood, from folks in the neighborhood. And one performer in particular wanted to do what she referred to as trans fashion shows. And I said, great, because at that point I just wanted to get people in the door in some way or another. And after seeing it, one of the nights, one of the performers came up to me afterwards and said, "You have no idea how important it was that this happened here." And I was like, "Oh, great. Yeah, great." And thankfully, they wouldn't let me just brush it off. And they said again, "No, you have no idea how important this was that it happened here, that it happened in the sanctuary." And from there, I got the idea that we would have a lip sync evening of using gospel music rather than just pop music. And what transpired over the next years was one of the most organic experiences I've ever had. And long story short, maybe that's too late, but what it became was a ministry to the ballroom community, and had wonderful interactions with various houses of the ballroom community. And we would have monthly services. I started calling them gospel night because of the kind of music we were using. But then it turned into, somebody named it Inspirational Gospel Showcase. And it became a wonderful mix of ballroom type performances mixed in with a little bit of liturgy and a little bit of preaching here and there. And we ended up developing quite a loyal congregation that would gather each month. And I had a wonderful crew of people who all were connected with the ballroom community. And they would plan it and provide all the support necessary for it to happen. And I'm glad to say that I've left St. John's this past summer, but I'm really glad to see that the ministry is continuing. And just a side note, we also became sort of the unofficial memorial chapel because so many people, when they were looking to have a memorial event for one who had departed, they wanted to have a place where they could have an authentic celebration of that person's life, which wasn't always possible with the families of the person who had passed. So it was quite a growing experience. It taught me so much because I had so little experience with the community that I was now ministering to, and they just taught me and blessed me in so many ways.
I appreciate how what you shared, Mark, touches upon the importance of ritual and the need that we all have to engage, to ritually engage spiritual practices to mark and honor the ways in which we live our lives. That's one of the things, Rebel, that you had spoken with me about as an important aspect of care and expression within the drag community. Might you share a little bit more about the importance of ritual?
So ritual in context of drag, I mean, you hear so often the process of adorning the body and having the body as the altar to step into this sense of self that you get to imagine. And there's so much play and pleasure in that imagining of self. And you step into that role, in that presence. You come and perform and interact and move with spirit or the energy of the room. And then there's also this, my favorite part of putting on makeup is the delicious unfolding of taking it all off, of stripping down back to my like silly little human body and regrounding in a new context, letting it and unfold.
I appreciate we hear a lot about putting the ornamentation on. We often hear less about taking it off. And I appreciate how you framed it as a grounding activity, one that can sort of bring us back into maybe more the everyday flows of the world that seem to surround us. I'm gonna like now engage some of my own practices more thoughtfully as a result. Thank you. I'm wondering if our panelists might have a story, something that you recall from working with the drag community that maybe changed how you offered accompaniment or care in the course of your work and vocation. That's for any of you that might have a thought or story.
I guess I'll jump in. And I remember one of the memorials, somebody was doing a tribute, a lip sync tribute for the person who had passed. And after the service, the performer apologized for being a little too flashy with her dress and her presentation. And I was like, no, don't apologize at all. I said, in fact, I think you should come to church and sit in the front row for Easter because you are an embodiment of resurrection in terms of how beautiful and true she was to herself. And encounter like that and others just taught me that, there's so many voices that people have heard along their journey that tell them they don't belong in a faith community. They don't belong and what they appreciate about themselves doesn't belong in that ritual setting. And so much of my contribution to those services over the years was to help people think in new ways and hear new voices and hear an invitation that was, radical, which is the invitation that I hear from Jesus. And so I'm just echoing that, and to really make sure that we're we are being strong voices of proclamation, as not that everybody's got all the right answers, but to give them a new way of hearing God's grace-filled invitation into living a life.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your ability to see invitation and creation and the encouragement of bringing full self into our spaces of religious practice, which so often have been uninvited and have been places of scorn and ridicule. Diane, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just was thinking about that. I really resonated with what Mark had to say about, welcoming folks into the parish, your parish church for all kinds of rituals. My experience had been that, we had done a lot of that over the years. And then I had one of my friends had come to me and said, I know your parish church, welcomes folks. You've done funerals, we've done gospel drag brunches and extreme makeover drag edition, and weddings. But I'm just not comfortable, and I really want you to marry us. How would you feel about doing a wedding in a bar with a drag show, like we do every night, right? And I said, well, certainly, of course. And I said, but because of my role in the church, there's a few things that I'm required to do in order to get permission to marry folks. It happens for everybody. You have to do, premarital counseling and all the things, right? All the things. And so we did this beautiful wedding in this tiny little bar on 6th. Oh, it's OMG. John knows it. It's very tiny. And I mean, I think then I really realized that we had to bring the ritual, when invited, out into the community. And, the church is always there. We're doing all those things. I'm doing less of it now that I'm getting older in the church and sticking with the community, as long as I can. And the importance of invitation, being invited, has been really important in my journey, and being in long-term relationships with folks. So, I'm just the old lady hanging out, and you know where to get me, right? And because I also maintain a relationship with my denomination, which of course is a challenge at times, and should be, I guess. Yeah, right. I have long-term relationships in my denomination, in other established faith communities, so that at the very least, I can be a listening ear and a resource for people. But being able to take those rituals out into the community is really important.
Yeah. Thank you for lifting up the importance of invitation. Thank you for reminding us that the rituals don't, and Mark touched on this too, the rituals don't have to be located at or look anything like they might have previously. That's one of the gifts, I think, that I'm hearing that accompanying queer and drag artist community can provide. The drag community oftentimes evangelizes spiritual care providers, evangelizes the church to be more and fuller, and all that the divine, the great power around us in us, through us, whatever we may conceive of the divine invites. And I see that Zoe made it! Oh, Zoe, thank you.
Hello.
Oh, you had luggage drama, you had airport drama, but you're still showing up. That's rock star character right there.
Thank you so
welcome,
much.
Zoe. Might you share for those of us either online or here at the summit a little bit about your spiritual care provision and context? Like what leads you to this incredible panel today?
Okay. Hello, I'm Zoe. I'm 22. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And yeah, I made it today. I'm still taking a couple of deep breaths, but I still made it. My friend that I'm traveling with is waiting for my luggage still. I went to the hotel, threw something on, and we're here, so it still feels totally otherworldly to be looking at my phone right now because my laptop is with my friend. But hello. I grew up in the Assemblies of God faith, in the Assemblies of God denomination, in the suburbs outside of Detroit, Michigan. And then from there, I went on to plant like 2 churches with my family. My family were oftentimes in leadership roles, but also sometimes pastoral roles. So that was really interesting to juggle in high school. Like going to youth group and doing like church planting type activities, like outreach and stuff like that. But above all else, it was definitely like a Pentecostal background. And then I went off to college and I just thought about some things and thought about some of my opinions regarding what my past experience had been. And that's when I said, you know what, I think I want to take some time away from anything and everything and really just figure out what I know infallibly to be true. So then that is kind of where my 20s took me. And so we're still doing some learning, we're still doing some living, but it's been really interesting. And I would just love to point out that one of my favorite things that 22, that's how I am now, what that has taught me, has just been that, like, while I stepped away from the Christian denomination faith, it's so interesting to me how many of the things that I'm picking up to be like true for my own life and my own self, my own morality, how much is lining up. So yeah, I guess I'm just a Zoe of my roots.
Thank you, Zoe. Zoe, I appreciate you sharing some of your narrative because one of the things I heard struck me as common within the queer and drag community. Many of us may have multi-religious belonging. Many of us maybe have stepped away from our traditions of origin because they have felt unsafe. We might be trying to dabble back with them again at times when they resonate or serve us, or we might be looking only in other directions. I'm wondering if anyone on the panel might speak a bit to some of the common narratives that you have heard or experienced yourself amongst the queer or drag spiritual seeking communities. Yes, Rebel.
So I personally, my mother is Catholic, so I've been in the White Catholic Church. My dad is a Black Baptist, so I've been in the Black Baptist Church. I've very much experienced the similarities between them and the differences and sense of expression in each of them as well. And their spirit definitely lives there in different ways. The feeling is different. The feeling in this church is different. And I've known a lot of my own queer friends to have started out in church very young and still feel a sense of like attachment to that spirit. And at the same time understand that like that space, that context they were pushed out of it. And what I also see, and this is very evident in drag, I have a lot of friends that are musicians as well, those spaces become spaces of communion and of worship as well. I feel the way divinity moves from the flow of curation and the conversation between them and their fellow performers and the audience. And I've heard a lot of these amazing artists here speak of the experience of that flow of energy when they're performing, they connect with the audience and how there's just nothing quite like it. And I think that we can find those pockets of worship with each other, with ourselves, sitting in circle, gathering in these different ways. And I think each time we do it, it is a little bit different every time. Every connection, with every audience connection, is gonna feel a little bit different. And I just love that sense of presence, that you never quite know what exactly is going to come up, but it's up, it's there, there is. I was reading a book from the Emergent Strategy series recently, and there's a conversation that can only be had by the people in this room. And that's just so exciting.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on narratives that perhaps we have heard commonly within the queer community in providing spiritual care, or ways that those narratives might move you to encourage other accompaniers of the drag community as they think about their work? Diana.
I'm looking for all the buttons. I know that as I was growing up, I had a very, very diverse experience with organized religion and religion in my family. My father's side of the family were angry Catholics who never went to church. And on my mother's side, they were Mormon, LDS. But nobody was practicing anymore, right? But with a great history, people in my family were attached to their religious origins in some kind of way that was meaningful for them, but not necessarily religious, right? And then when I was 9, my father converted to Judaism to marry a woman that he loved. And so I went to Hebrew school and everything. I was like 9, right? And then when I was a teenager, I was an interfaith dabbler. I just explored. I was lucky enough to go to a high school in San Francisco that had that kind of opportunity through their art history program at that time. And so I was always very interested in faith and religions of any kind. And when I finally, I guess probably I have to think now, in my 30s, when I was looking for a spiritual home, that I came kind of back to kind of an Anglo-Catholic style of worship. And that's how I made my home. And I find that when I'm doing pastoral care or being present in the community, especially, after so many years, is that I get it. right? I can identify with a lot of journeys that folks have and a lot of styles. I don't like to use the word styles. Expressions of worship that people have in their rituals, and how sometimes it doesn't, like you said earlier, it doesn't have to look like what folks will expect. And I'm good to roll with it. It's like, okay, I understand this. This is important. The beauty of the ritual of, your family of origin, maybe, still has meaning, and this all good. And so I feel I'm able to be comfortable with it, which is, I think, I'm pretty happy with that.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, the multiplicity of experiences that we listen to as accompaniers has stood out to me as well, because we are many, many communities within the larger queer community, even queer communities plural. And so there is a way in which be ready for anything, right? Be ready for anything, and every shade of anything. So, Rebel, one of the things that Diana was bringing up that struck me to turn to you to comment on some more was heritage, ancestors, staying connected to an experience even amidst potential disconnections. And I'm wondering if you have some commentary not only about sort of honoring heritage and ancestors, but even next generations with drag and spirituality.
Yeah. And so, okay, let's start with ancestors.
Yeah.
My brain is splitting in all these different directions.
No, gave you a lot of that question. Gave you a lot of that question.
Layers. With ancestors, it's what you don't have to work with all of your ancestors. You just don't. You don't have to honor and venerate people that do not honor you, have not done the work in their journeys in order to support your own.
Yes.
So find the ancestors that do show up for you and invite them in and follow their practices. There are some ancestors that are very present for me. There are others that are distant. There are some that I have told that you have other descendants that you can work with. You can find them. You can seek forgiveness through them. You can find healing through them. I'm not the descendant for you. I'm not it. And so, just as any relationship in this walking world, any relationship on the other side of things, through the veil, spirit, the next world, however, whatever language that you use that affirms you, you can have boundaries in those relationships as well. You can ask for what you need, you can leave what doesn't work for you, and please do. They want to be with you. Just like for me, I want my descendants to be able to reach me. I want to be around them. I think all the time of when would they call me? As an ancestor, what do I represent? And the last conversation that was had up here, they mentioned the saints around you, the queer people that you honor, that inspire you. Different saints have different affinities. And so I think about what is my affinity as an ancestor, and I hope that my descendants call to me when they are seeking to embody their fullest selves, whether that is in a moment of bliss or terror, or both. I want to be there.
Beautiful, thank you. Yes, so whether it was, Diana's father converting to Judaism right before he died, and then going to Hebrew school, or calling in the ancestors trying to contact you. There are lots of different ways that our heritage play into how we grow or how we seek spiritual care. I appreciate the varied awarenesses being brought. And Zoe's back, hooray! Zoe, you disappeared right when I was going to ask you a question, so I'm so glad you're back.
I'm glad to be back.
And so I just wanted to ask Zoe, as you have been emerging and exploring, you are a drag artist, you have experience doing ministry work. What are some of the things that you're discovering? Like, if there were someone who were coming up after you, what might be Zoe's, one or two things to watch for that you want to tell the next drag queen growing up out of a faith community?
I would say, regardless of whoever you're ministering to, whoever is ministering beside you, one of the things that you have to keep at the forefront, I truly believe, is just like the spirit of individuality, the spirit of doing like what you should be doing, what you feel you should be doing. And not necessarily whatever you want to do, but be yourself, and don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't let any organization take that away from you. Don't let anybody on the outside in the audience take that away from you. So I would say that for sure. Because there are definitely times when that's hard, and there's definitely times where that's easy. But I would say that through and through, time after time, it's important. I would also say to remember that everyone's human, and that we're here to spread and share love. That's my biggest thing. It's all about love. Life, to me, is all about love, giving the love, receiving the love, loving the love. So yeah, I would say don't lose touch with the love, because that's what's going to bring the fruits of everything else.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you. And out again.
Just suited to bless us.
Right, exactly. Coming in with a good word and stepping away again. Mark and Diana, one of the things that, yes, Mark.
Yeah. If I could just jump in, because I'm one who had no experience with drag performance. Had no experience. My experience of the ballroom community was I saw Parishes Burning, when it first came out. I mean, I really was being introduced to a whole new culture. And to those who are out there who are like me, who I don't know if allies is an appropriate word, if sometimes, or just find themselves encountering a culture that is different. The church has such a horrible missionary reputation of forcing our ways on cultures that the church encounters. And if we have learned anything from global missions, it's like back off and listen. And so I learned so much, as I went, and didn't make the priority of making it and having people fit into a certain box, into a certain liturgy or anything, but I just encourage people to really listen, and stay as flexible as you possibly can. I know, especially those of us from liturgical backgrounds, we think of, the liturgy is set. It's like, nah, the liturgy is this wonderful skeleton, and we can hang all kinds of muscle and tissue and dresses and boas on that and make it look fabulous. Just a real quick story. We were doing a memorial for a young person who was known as a great voguer. And I didn't know this person. And with these memorials, I would always let those who were celebrating the life plan it. I didn't force them to do anything. I didn't even have to be involved. I was just there. So they're talking on and on about what a reputation this person had as a voguer. And somebody came over and whispered to me and said, "Could we do a voguing tribute?" And I looked and I said, "Well, of course. I mean, how could this be a celebration of this life without a voguing tribute?" And suddenly at this memorial, a voguing tribute broke out with 2 people dancing, and the rest of the house, I think it was the House of Ebony, was giving them a beat to dance. And oh my goodness, it was the most joyous. And I said, I'm not known for voguing, but I'd like this to happen at my memorial.
Really sort of enlivened you as you were telling it, enlivened me hearing it. And I appreciate the idea of a liturgy wearing a feather boa with you on that. And yes, it's the ways in which we changed, right, as we engage with others, as we are in authentic community, authentic relationship with others. That's a question I have for each of the panelists. As you have engaged with the drag or the gender expressive, expansive community, what are ways that you and or your faith has changed? Oh, Diana, I saw you take a deep breath. Does he feel comfortable, Diana? Is the seat feeling uncomfortable?
Okie dokie. So, I was a person who was very, obviously I didn't grow up in any one church. I had a lot of experiences as a child and a teenager and an adult that I felt that I had to explain myself for. I would say that I felt, a lot of shame about my background. And as I developed, as an adult, and I did a lot of therapy, believe me, developed and grew in my role as a church-going person. And in my vocation, as I came to understand my vocation as a minister in the church, I still carried some of that. When you go through a whole process and you're standing in front of, a whole national organization, and you just feel like this small, right? I'm this small. And yet I went through it, and I completed requirements. I didn't fudge, and what did I have to be ashamed about? It was just all me, right? And when I began my ministry was San Francisco Night Ministry, and I was walking on the first 2 years. It was awesome because it was a paid fellowship. So I was walking on the street in the middle of the night, 5 nights a week. That's pretty consistent. You see me pretty consistently, in the bars and the nightclubs and on the streets. And that whole experience changed me. First of all, I wasn't supposed to be on the street. My grandmother was rolling over in her grave or puffing in her urn or something. Women were not supposed to be out in the middle of the night. You just didn't do that. And so I had to get over a lot of stuff. And And then I was really began to have very strong family types of relationships. I was in, I can't remember how old I was when I started. I was in my 50s when I started. I look good, don't I? Anyway, I started in my 50s. So I was like a total late bloomer. And I started doing things that I had never done before. And I had to learn how to sit on a bar stool. Oh my God. You fall off of those and break a hip. But over the years, I have developed very long-term family type of relationships with folks as an elder. So I'm like walking into my elderhood and realizing that I'm doing that. Well, sometimes when people love you, they invite you to do certain things. And I work with the imperial court system and with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence a lot and help with their fundraisers, because that's the concern of the community and their concerns become my concerns. That's part of being a family. And then they want me to do drag. And that was really life-changing for me, because now I have a lot of background as a young person in performing arts and teaching performing arts in schools. So this was just another layer of it. And to have the joy of somebody that you've been in a relationship with for a long time, you know what their day-to-day life is, you know what their sorrows and joys are, you know what they do for a living, and they're beating your face. and loaning you clothes and teaching you how to do the whole thing. It was so life-changing for me, because in order to put that on, you have to let go of a lot of things. And you have to, I found that I was able to express parts of myself that I longed to, and that the love that I shared with folks, this was a part of that expression of love. And so, yeah, sometimes I, at invitation, will show up and do your fundraiser for you. And it's really it has been life-changing for me. And I think, John, you've been there a long time. I think we've worked together for at least 10 years around each other and with each other. I think that's true. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Diana. And I know, Mark, you said you weren't part of the ballroom culture, but I've judged a drag show with you, and you had some criteria that you were asking for people to meet. So I know that you've been changed too. As we move towards wrapping up, I'm wondering if there was a thought, feeling, an idea that emerged for any of you that you would like to depart with, as far as your experiences providing care for the drag artists and gender expressive, expensive community.
Well, I'll also answer the last question about how it changed us, and maybe also answer the question that you just asked. It saddens me to hear faith communities be so strict, so set up so many obstacles, be so unwelcoming. Because to me, what has probably changed me the most is by growing in my understanding of the radical welcome of God, then I myself am more welcomed into the presence of the divine. And it's sort of, it's that when you show mercy, you will know mercy. And it just saddens me when people have an image of the divine that is so limited and limiting. The old phrase, "Your God is too small." And I think when we appreciate the all welcoming divine, then we ourselves grow in how we understand ourselves to be welcomed. We understand ourselves to be loved. We understand ourselves to be the recipient of infinite mercy. And so, you know, I stumbled into it, but it has had such a profound effect on me and my sense of my place in the divine, and in terms of Christian wording, in my place in God's family. So.
Thank you, Diana.
I just totally resonate with what you say. It's, you know, a space that you have to, you know, all of a sudden you understand your place in God's big love, right? And as ordained ministers, or, you know, if you're working in any area of the church, whether you're a lay leader or ordained or whatever, we're human beings with stuff, right? Like any other human being, we're no different. And when they do try to fit you into a box, they do. The institution does. And, you know, the people in the institution need healing. And I think, though, you know, we minister with no agenda, you know, we're supposed to empty ourselves and all this stuff. We are human beings. And I know for me, my experience with ministry in the drag community and the queer community has really, like you say, Mark, has really showed me that divine place, and that, you know, I'm loved and accepted, and you know, and go ahead. I'm blathering. Don't blather.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, one thing for all care providers to know is when they're blathering and to be quiet. Well, Diana, I'm right there with you, but I especially want to give Rebel the last word in this panel, because they've had to survive through being with a whole bunch of callers. So Rebel, things, anything that has struck you or that you would like to leave the audience on with?
I would just love people to be invited to staying curious about yourselves, about the world around you, and allow yourself to be curious about your environment. It's gonna look a little different for everyone, and it's gonna be made up of so many different other things pulled together. It's a mosaic. Thank you.
Thank you. May we all live into the fullness. May we all find ways for the full expression of the divine